Greetings, Dustin from Roland here at Sweetwater, and today I'm very excited to show you the brand new SH-4d. The SH-4d is a 4-part multi-timbral desktop synthesizer with the addition of a 5th part, a rhythm track that consists of 26 customizable drum instruments. There's a deep internal pattern sequencer with a polyphonic track for each part with tons of creative tools. On the front panel, you have all the familiar hands-on controls for classic synth programming with the addition of the Oscillator section here, which is central to sound creation and performance workflow. Along the bottom is a 26-note button keyboard, 16 step sequencer buttons, and lots more tools for navigating, editing settings, and performance of sounds and patterns. At the core of each of the 4 polyphonic synth parts are 11 unique oscillator models to choose from. These range from classic analog-style subtractive synthesis with 4 stacked oscillators to digital models like Wavetable, Cross FM, and more. There are also some classic Roland synth models in there as well. The spirit of the SH-4d is immediate, hands-on synthesis and sound design, starting with the oscillator section here, which, as we'll see soon, reassigns its controls depending on the oscillator model that's selected, giving quick access to the most useful and effective parameters for that style of synthesis. Our sound moves then through the filter and amp and finally out to the effects. There are full controls for filter ADSR, amp ADSR, and an LFO section with quick destination amounts for pitch, filter, and amp. To take things deeper, there's a comprehensive modulation matrix with quick assignments. Let's start by taking a look through a few choice selections from the different oscillator models. The first model is the SH-4d model, which uses the slider section as a 4-oscillator mixer, and we can mix different oscillator shapes, which have their own settings for pulse width modulation, wave shape, and much more. This runs through the brand new ladder style filter. Now this filter is multi-mode with band pass and high pass as well. We also have a brand new filter drive, which is a pre-filter drive, really driving the harmonics and driving the level of those wave shapes into the filter, changing the characteristic. Let's add a little bit of LFO to the filter. The next model is the SH-3d model, which is the same as the SH-4d model, however we've swapped out the 4th oscillator for a second LFO, allowing for even more complex modulations. And then we have the sync model. Now this is a good example of how the slider section reorganizes itself for really useful kind of controls. So on the sliders, we've got a pitch envelope for the syncing oscillator, and we've also got manual control for the pitch difference between the 2 oscillators. And this is a great way to get that quick, classic kind of hard sync sound without having to change any settings. Just load it up, tweak the sliders a bit, tweak your wave shape, and you're ready to go. And then we have the SH-101 and Juno 106 models. And with these models, the slider section and the buttons rearrange themselves to mirror the core kind of controls from the original hardware in regard to waveform, mixing, and shaping. Now, the Cross FM model is a 2-operator FM synthesizer. We can select different wave shapes for both the carrier and the modulator. Let's leave those as sine waves for now. We can set our ratio using the timbre knob at the top, and the sliders rearrange themselves to be an envelope for the index. So we've got an ADSR here. Let's leave it at a high ratio, get kind of a tiny sound. We can, of course, increase the attack. Let's bring that ratio down a little bit lower and we can get more kind of clangorous sounds. Now, we can also get a little bit deeper. Let's change the wave shape of the modulator to a square wave. 1 octave even lower. And we'll go into the menu and we can do things like pulse width modulation on either the carrier or the modulator. And also some more wave shaping options. It's extremely versatile. Let's change that ratio down just to 1 and see what we get. And remember, regardless of which model you're using, it's going through this ladder filter. So even with models like FM, you can further shape using all the tools to the right. After Cross FM, we have the ring model, which is based around classic ring modulation with a bunch of extra tools like wave shaping and additional frequency modulation. And now we get to the wavetable model. With the wavetable model, you have 31 different wavetables to choose from, and you can manually sweep through the wavetable position using slider number 1. Additionally, similar to the sync model, we have an auxiliary envelope on sliders 2, 3, and 4 that will traverse that wavetable for us. The filter drive works also even if the filter is completely open, adding more harmonics and rectifying the sound. Over to the right of the filter in the ADSR section, we have the effects section. Now, each of the 4 parts for each synth, plus the rhythm part, has its own dedicated effects. There are over 90 effects to choose from for each part. Let's try throwing a flanger on this. Also, there's a reverb, chorus, and delay send for each part. Let's add a bit of reverb. And delay. When using the SH-4d with an external MIDI keyboard, you can take advantage of velocity sensitivity as well as CC controls, because almost all of the controls for the SH-4d models respond to and send MIDI CC. However, I've got a keyboard hooked up here, and this wavetable sound that we're working on, let me just turn down the drive a little bit. I'm going to go into the mod matrix and quickly assign by pressing Enter and the source I want, which is the keyboard. I'm going to assign key tracking to wavetable position. So now, if I play higher on the keyboard, we'll be on a different spot in the wavetable. The chord model provides paraphonic chord creation that's really quick with selection of different chord styles and voicings. Then we've got wave shaping and modulation on the other sliders. With the drawing oscillator, we can actually create our own custom wave shapes using the sliders and some other controls. Let's turn the arpeggiator on and get something running. So right now, we've just got a basic square wave we can see on screen. Using the sliders, we can add some more basic square shapes, putting it up an octave. But we can dig in more by using the buttons and sliders to create some slopes. and then getting in even deeper, creating more pulse kind of shapes on screen here. Let's have a listen to that. We can then reshape and kind of smooth things out. And of course, we can still use the filter and all of the other synthesis tools over to the right. And finally, the PCM model, much like the SH-4d model, allows for mixing of up to 4 waveforms, but this time selecting from a bank of classic PCM sampled waveforms. To explore preset sounds, press the sound button, and here we can look through either by model type or by pressing sound again, we can scroll by the type of sound. So synth leads, brass, pads and strings, etc., etc. Now let's take a look at the rhythm track. So the rhythm instruments on the SH-4d very much follow in the same spirit as the synth tracks, in that it's all about quick creation of original sounds. So the way this works is that we have 26 individual instruments, and each of them is kind of a synth in its own right, because you have the ability to choose from 2 separate waveforms, which you can layer, and then you have a filter, a pitch envelope, full filter ADSR, and amped ADSR for each instrument, right? So, for example, could grab white noise, put that through a high-pass filter with some resonance, and create a hi-hat sound. Or, for the kick, could grab something like a sampled 808 kick and add a pitch envelope to it, creating a bit more of a 909 style kind of punch. And if I wanted, I could go in and layer an additional waveform on top of that. Each drum instrument has its own individual send to the master, reverb, chorus, and delay. Now is a great time to check out the pattern sequencer, starting with the rhythm track. So each of the 26 instruments on the rhythm track has its own step sequencer. Let's run a beat. When adding notes, you can play in either live or just input them on the step sequencer strip. If you hold the note down, you can adjust things like velocity, gate length, probability, and substeps and flams. That probability allows you to do a lot of kind of interesting sequences that, you have certain hits that only happen every once in a while. Moving on to the first synth track, there's a few different ways to record into the sequencer. One of them being step recordings. If I hold down a step, play notes in order, and you can see that this track is actually only 12 steps long. That's because each track of the pattern can have a different pattern length. This one is 12. It can also play back at different speeds and in different directions. Let's take a listen to what that bass step sequence sounds like. Nice. Now, moving on to the next track, I've already got a sequence input here, and this is using the chord model. Now, another way that we can record is by holding down a step and inputting a note. And while we're doing that, we can also change different parameters, motion record them per step. This can also be done live if you'd like. Here, what I've done is programmed the specific chord type that I want for each step. So you can see, as we play back, the chord type will be changing for these different notes. Let's bring in another track here. And we'll use the Wavetable synth, and this time we'll record in live. I'm also going to change the wavetable position in real time while recording. And we can see on the screen that wavetable's changing, just like we played it in. Adjust the filter a little bit. I'll bring in one last part. We can also go into mixing mode, where we have control over the level of each of the 4 synth parts, as well as the rhythm part. And we have quick mutes for each part, including each individual drum instrument. Great for performance. You can also access this mute menu momentarily just by holding down the pattern button. Master effects will be added to the final output. The SH-4d also has demotion functionality, which uses an internal motion sensor to apply different modulations, which you can route in the comprehensive modulation matrix section. Here we have demotion controlling XY parameters going to just a synth part, and you'll hear some changes while I start to tilt and rotate the SH-4d. An additional function of demotion is visual arpeggios. Let's take a look at the bubble arpeggio. And what I'm going to do is throw in a couple notes. And we can change the speed and the gravity. And picking up the SH-4d, we can influence this even further. Let's take a quick look at the connectivity on the SH-4d. First, we have a headphone out, 1/4 inch TRS. We've got dual 1/4 inch main outputs. We've got a mix input, 3.5mm stereo that goes straight to the output, so that's for chaining devices together. We've also got an external clock input for synchronizing the SH-4d with external analog gear. We've got 5-pin MIDI in and out, and then we have USB-C, and this can provide 5-volt power. It also, with the correct driver, has full multi-channel USB audio and MIDI. So you get a stereo channel for each synth part, stereo channel for the drum part, and stereo channel for your main channel output. And this includes effects. You could use external battery power packs with the USB-C for power, but also the SH-4d can run off of AA batteries. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about the Roland SH-4d, check out sweetwater.com or contact your Sweetwater sales engineer.